Hey guys, so today I'm showing you guys a tutorial on how to create digital paintings where you paint over the line art so you can't see it anymore. I've had a lot of people ask me to make this, and I just have taken a while to getting around to it because it's going to be a longer video. It kind of takes some time to explain the process. It's not just like one step. So hopefully you guys learn a lot from this, and let's get started. So here we have a sketch of this cute little hamster guy thingy. I don't know, he's like a chubby cat. I don't know what he is. But it's a picture I took out of my sketchbook, uploaded it into Procreate, cleaned up the line art and adjusted it so that I could just have the line art. Okay, so I have the line art here. It's set on a multiply layer just by itself. Now the next step after that is to do your flat colors. So you're gonna make a new layer, drag it underneath your line art layer, and paint in the flat colors of what you want this guy to be. Now your flat colors should be, imagine what this, I'll finish explaining flat colors. But flat colors are what color this would be without any sort of lighting on it or shadows. Just like completely neutral, not having any shadows cast on it, not having any light hitting it. This is just what it is at its base color, okay? That's what we're going to be doing with the flat colors. And before I forget, you're going to want to set your background color to gray, okay? That way you have like a neutral color to work with. If you have a white, it's going to make all the colors you use seem too dark. If you use a black, it will make all your colors seem too bright. So I like to use a neutral gray to give me a good idea of where my colors lie, okay? So, and then I also set my brush to about 50% opacity, 40%, so that I can get a little bit more color variation. So now I'm going to start painting in the rough colors of my guy here. Maybe bring the opacity up to like 60. That's better. Alright, so I'm going to start painting this in. And in the beginning, it's not going to be covering the line art yet, okay? You want it to be underneath the lines at this point, okay? So go ahead and paint that in. And get some different color variation in there so that your painting doesn't end up coming out so, I guess, bland, you know? You want it to have some life, right? So paint this in there. Once you get it all painted in, go ahead and go along the outside edge, and you can clean up the edges with the eraser tool. Get it all nice. Paint everything in there how you want it. Minus the spots. I don't do any markings yet, okay? This is just like the base color. So here's what I came up with for my flat colors. This is what my flat colors look like, okay? So now that we have the flat colors, the next layer we're going to add is our shadow layer, okay? So you're going to go ahead and create a new layer. You're going to set it to multiply, and I recommend naming it shadow layer because you're going to get a lot of layers doing this, and you want to know what layer is what, okay? So rename this to shadow, and then you're going to pick the main color of your creature and go ahead and make it a little darker and a little bluer, and then with your opacity set like around 50% on your brush, you're going to go ahead. Oh, and make sure this is above your line art as well, okay? You're going to go ahead and start brushing in your shadows. And you know what you can also do is select your flat colors layer so that you can make sure you don't paint outside the lines on accident. So now I can stay inside the lines, and I'm going to start brushing in where all my shadows are. You can use whatever brush you want. I actually think when I did it, I used this brush. Yeah. Use this brush to put my shadows in. So yeah, just start putting your shadows in. Think about where the light is coming from. In this picture, I imagine the light was coming from, let me unselect, as if it was coming this way, is what I imagine. So I'm going to be painting all the shadows on this side over here, behind each fold of fat. And, oh, that's why I'm not painting on my multiply layer. Make sure you're on the right layer, folks. Alright. There we go. That looks better. So try and get the general light source. Think about where shadows are being cast by parts of his body. His ears would cast a shadow. This would all be in shadow back here. behind each roll of fat would be a little bit of shadow, okay? And then, so what I have for my shadow, oh, and then after you do that, you can go ahead and adjust the opacity till it looks about right to you, okay? So, go ahead and delete that layer. This is what my shadows were after I did the first pass, okay? So I have my flats and I have my shadows. Now, you should still be able to see your line art at this point because it's set to multiply. You still want to be able to see your line. So this is just flats, first pass of shadows. You should still be able to see it, okay? Now this next, the next layer is going to be our light layer, okay? And this is the point at which we'll be able to start painting over the line. So next is to start painting in your light, okay? And so if you're imagining your light source, my light source is coming from the right of the creature, then, and I'm imagining it's kind of a warm light, right? So I'm going to select the color, the local color that I'm about to create the light point on. Then I'm going to go to my color selector. I'm going to move it a little bit warmer and a little bit brighter, like that. And then I'm going to come in here and imagine the places where the light is going to be hitting. And I'm just going to start painting it in. I still have my brush on a lowered opacity, so I have more edge control. And we're just going to start painting this right in there, wherever we think light's going to be. And at this point, you should be on top of your line art. So this layer should be on top of your lines and your shadows. And you should be able to start kind of painting over the edges of your line art wherever there's going to be light. Okay? So your goal right now isn't to just go paint over every line. Okay? You're just painting in the light. And if there happens to be a line there, you can paint over it. So like this line on his cheek, for example, there's going to be light on the other side of this crevice where this wrinkle is, and so I can paint over that line, right? Same on this side. But that doesn't mean I'm going to go over here and just start painting over every single line I see. No, 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 no. You just want to paint over the lines that happen to be in the area that's being lit, okay? And then for each area, so like for example, this blue part up here, I'm going to need to select a different color, move that a little brighter, move it a little bit more towards the red, and do the same thing, okay? Go ahead and just paint over whatever lines are there. And it's not going to paint over all of them yet, all right? This is a process. So paint over that, okay? Put some on the ears wherever you think it's going to be lit, so on and so forth, and do the whole thing like that. We'll do down here so you can see an example, the color of the bottom part of him. Move that brighter, make it warmer, paint that light in. Alright? So, once you've done that, it should look something like this. Okay? That's my light layer. And you can see that it started to paint over the lines a little bit. If I turn that on and off, we just started painting over the lines. Okay? Now, the next layer, I go back and forth between the lights and the shadows. So we did the shadows, then we did some light. Now we're going to add some more shadows, okay? So we're going to go create a new layer on top of our shadow layer, but underneath our light layer. And I call this layer Deep Shadows. So you want to name it that. And then you're going to add even more shadows. Now this one is not going to be on multiply. You're just going to keep it normal, okay? And you're going to select the color that you want. So we're going to come down here in the shadow, and then I'm going to move it a little bit cooler and a little bit darker, and I'm just going to paint right on and darken that area up, and I'm painting over the line art this time, okay? So anywhere where these little lines that this color is going to cover, I'm just going to go ahead and paint right over it. And anywhere that should be darker, I'm going to do the same thing. So maybe in these fat folds, it's going to get darker behind here, okay? And do the whole thing like that. Anywhere that it needs to be pushed a little bit darker, come back here. The back of his leg is going to be darker, so I'm going to select this purple color, make it a little bit cooler and a little bit darker, and paint that in. Okay. And just do the whole thing. And the ear will get darker. Move it a little cooler, a little darker. Paint in some of the crevices and folds in the ear. Paint out the lines. Okay? You go over the whole thing. Once again, we're not trying to just paint out the lines. We're just trying to add the light, and eventually the lines will get painted out by themselves. Okay? So, once you've done that, this is what my deep shadows looks like. Okay, you can see that. Painted that in. Okay, and then next, now we're going back up to our light layer, which is going to be, I titled it bright light. Okay, so we're going to create a new layer, make sure it's set to normal, and we're going to do the same thing as before. Select the color we're going to be painting, move a little bit brighter, a little bit warmer, and you want to be tasteful about this. You don't want to go crazy, but just hit the parts that are going to be getting the most light, make them a little bit brighter, like so, and really just warm it up. Okay, any places that are going to be, and make sure you adjust your color for the different places you go to, a little warmer, a little brighter. Okay, like that. So my layer looks like this, my bright light layer. Okay, so now that we've done that, once again, we're going to go back one more time to the deep dark shadows. Okay, so same thing, you're going to select the places that need darker spots, move it darker. So here's my layer for that. It's really subtle, just a few tiny things that I thought needed to be pushed back, but it just gives it a little bit more depth. So put in those deep shadows. Then we have the highlight layer. So same thing as the bright light layer, only this time, so go ahead and make a new layer. You're going to select the parts that are the brightest, move it even warmer, and this time you're going to go really bright, all the way almost to the top, almost white, and you're just going to knock in a few places where the light's really going to be bouncing off. If you're painting a glossy object, it's going to be really bright like this, or really smooth, you know. If it's something that's more matte or has a rough finish, then you probably won't have as much of this. You might not even need to do this layer except for in a very few key points like the eyes, or any parts of him that are particularly shiny. Okay, so you're going to go in and do that layer. Once you do that layer, it should look, this is what mine looks like, my highlight layer. Okay, and like you can still see the lines at this point. Okay, we haven't gotten completely rid of the lines yet. All right, then I go back and paint occlusion, which is just like going into all the cracks and making sure they're dark enough. I set that layer to multiply, and I just go back with a gray and go into all the little crevices and the wrinkles and around the eyes that I think need to be pushed darker, and I just paint that in really quick. Okay, next we need to do I like to do the eyes, so I do the eyes on a separate layer because they're pretty important, and I just paint those right in. Okay, I get my brush and I look at some reference and I just paint straight onto the eyes with my brush and paint it exactly how I want it. Okay, there's no really trick to that, just paint it right on. It's on a normal layer. Okay, so the eyes, we got all that. Next, everything else we need is pretty much here, right? We're ready to get rid of the line. So what I do now is I duplicate my line art layer. I turn off one of them so I can hold on to the original in case I need to go back and use it for something. And then I get the soft brush and bring down the opacity just a little bit. And I start going in and just cleaning up the places where I don't want to see the line art. Okay? So like all these cross hatching I don't need anymore. I'm going to go in. I'm going to keep some of the line art around the eyes because they kind of add a little bit of a depth. They're helping support my shadows, right? So go clean up this line art. We don't want a silhouette anymore, right, around the teeth. Okay, get rid of those whiskers. We're going to paint in our own whiskers. And you're just going to go through, and anywhere that you don't need the line art anymore, just go ahead and erase it. And at this point, if you did the other part well, it should stay fairly crisp, and you should be able to still see the shape of your painting. Okay, so gone ahead, erased all the line art. Now that we have that, that's basically how you get rid of your line art. Okay, we've now painted over it. I'm going to go ahead and show you the rest of this painting and what I did. Created a background here, just filled it in with a gradient, painted a foreground with some light and stuff for him to be sitting on. So that looks pretty nice. Let's turn that back on. Paint a foreground, put the shadow in there on a multiply layer, so it grounds them a little bit. Okay. paint our reflected light. So any light that would be bouncing off the ground or the wall behind him is going to bounce a little bit of light onto his backside and underneath him, which is going to give him just a little bit more form. I did that on a normal layer. Using color dodge, I select a really bright color like a bright orange, and I just go over all the spots where the highlights are and just really burn in the colors with the color dodge tool. It's really subtle, and on this guy, with the color he is, you can't really tell that much, so it's not a big deal. Then I put some more shadows on the whisker holes on a multiply layer. I did, let's see, what's this? Oh, a little bit brighter reflected light on the backside. This is where we start getting texture. So I created a new layer. I set it to multiply, and I just went in here and created all these spots and textures. I did this area around his eyes. I looked at some reference for a tiger because I kind of like those shapes a little bit, on top of his head. And then when I came down here into his legs and stuff, I changed the color a little bit because it was looking really purple. And I just changed that a little bit. Let's see here. And then I did a little bit of white area around his eyes to really bring up the contrast more. And then as well as put some more color on his legs so they kind of got pushed back further. Did a whisker layer, just on normal. Got a really tiny thin brush, drew in those whiskers in there. And then I was feeling like he was feeling a little bit bland on the bottom. I didn't really like the color going on, so I just set a layer to overlay on the very top and filled it with pink because I really liked that color. So at this point, you can no longer see any of the line art. It should look pretty good. And you can do this with any painting. This is the process I use for any painting that I don't want to be able to see the line art. Later in the thumbnail, you could see that I have a little bit more going on. And I'll just show you guys. This is like the finished product all the way. What I did was I took it into Photoshop. I used the blur tool just because the blur tool in Photoshop is a little bit stronger and gets the job done better than Procreate does. So I used that blur tool and I blurred the edges so it looked like he is out of focus in certain parts. The areas that would be further away from the camera I blurred more. And the areas that were closer I blurred less or not at all, so that it looks like there's a field of depth that makes him look really tiny. I also put an overlay texture of like some rust on top of everything. I set it to overlay and brought the opacity way down. So you can see if I turn this all the way up, you can see that texture. I brought it down to like 28% just to make it kind of feel more photorealistic, give it like an old-timey photo feel. And then I created these dust particles, and all you do for these dust particles, they're really easy. Pick a really bright color, get a brush. It doesn't really matter what brush. Bring the size down. You're just going to paint a bunch of these little tiny specks in the air like this. Okay? Put them wherever you want. Make sure they're kind of like random. You don't want them evenly spaced, so it'll look kind of weird. Put a couple that are like really close to each other, some that are far apart, and just randomly place them all over the place. Then you're going to go to your adjustments menu, hit Gaussian blur, and just blur those till they look like they're out of focus, right? Then you're going to make a new layer and do the same thing again. However, you're going to blur it a little bit less so that it feels like there's different depths of these particles. Like some are close and some are far away. So this one, for example, you can blur a lot, or you can blur just a little bit, and it'll make them feel closer. And you want to make them different sizes so that when you're done, you have all these different layers. So these ones are really blurred, these ones are less blurred, and these ones are about in the middle. And it gives us this really awesome field of depth. So that's how I go about the process of painting over my line art. I hope that was useful and easy enough to follow. So yeah, if you guys want to see any other tutorials, be sure to leave them in the comments. Let me know what you want to see. Also send me your work if you want me to do a paint over or critique of your work, give you some feedback and stuff. So thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to subscribe if you're new. I have tons of more content like this, and I'm trying to post a video every day. I've been posting a video every day for about the past month, and I plan to keep that up. So thanks, guys, for all your support, and have a great night.